Welcome back, America. Yesterday evening, House Republicans released a 6-point proposal to address climate change and the U.S. energy crisis, which is on a lot of people's minds right now. Now, joining us are two individuals from organizations that played a vital role in the formulation of that plan. Please welcome to the show Chief Executive Officer of Clearpath, Rich Powell, and the Vice President of Government Affairs for the American Conservation Coalition, Quill Robertson. Gentlemen, great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here.
Rich, I want to start with you. Can you give us a brief overview of what's in this plan? How is it so different from what the Democrats have been proposing for years and not delivering?
Sure. Well, John, this is a really exciting moment. So conservatives have come together with a comprehensive plan to both continue the U.S. trajectory of reducing emissions and helping solve the climate crisis, while at the same time preserving the affordability of our energy system and improving American economic competitiveness and energy security. And so this plan takes everything from greater use of American resources, so producing more natural gas and supplying it to the rest of the world, like to our allies who so urgently need it in Russia, to innovating new advanced clean energy technologies, to improving our competitiveness and beating China and Russia, to using natural climate solutions and even adapting to the risks of climate change. It's a really comprehensive plan.
Impressive.
Well, both of you have done such a great job of working with members of Congress to push innovation in energy. So I applaud you both, but Quill, I'll direct this question to you. Republicans in Congress, I think, have always had a reputation of being kind of stubborn when it comes to moving along, innovating in the energy department, moving towards green and clean energy. How hard is it? Are you still going up against Republicans who are pushing back, or are pretty much Republicans across the board open to new ideas, open to that innovation, open to moving policy in that direction?
Amanda, I think we can all admit that Republicans have really struggled to connect with voters and particularly young people on issues like the environment and particularly climate change. But the fact is that the Republican Party has this long history of leading on conservation issues. I think back to Teddy Roosevelt, the conservation president, or Ronald Reagan leading with the Montreal Protocol. So there's actually this really rich history of Republican leadership on conservation. And what we're seeing right now is a reconnection with that legacy. And so with this plan, what Rich described, investing in nuclear, planting more trees, unlocking American resources, I think that what we really came upon here is a way to tackle this issue of climate change that is not only conservative, but it also is effective and really will resonate with American people who are very concerned about climate change, particularly my generation, who really wants answers and wants leadership on this issue.
Yeah, that is absolutely the key. You look at the polling data, and the youngest generation want the Republican Party to have a credible plan. They've got one now. It's comprehensive, as Rich said. The research I looked at the other day said 84% of Americans think clean energy is an issue Republicans in Congress should care about. They've now shown that, but only 44% believe they do, actually. How do you close that gap over the next few months now that you have this plan, Rich?
Well, first and foremost, as Quill said, conservatives have this terrific track record just in the past few Congresses. For example, they passed the Energy Act of 2020, signed into law by President Trump. Everyone agrees it's the largest clean energy and climate bill ever enacted in the United States. And yet we haven't had a great framework to talk about these issues, and especially to talk about how they address not just emissions here in the United States, but global emissions well, which is a much bigger part of the challenge. And so I think that now that this solutions framework exists, conservatives are going to be much better equipped to actually tell the story, not only for all the great policy that they've already enacted and passed, but all of their plans going forward.
So important.
Quill, I wanted to ask you, I know that the American Conservation Coalition has an event coming up in about a week on the 9th. Talk to us about what's going to be happening there.
Yeah, Amanda, so we are holding our inaugural ACC Summit here in DC starting next week. And essentially what we're going to be doing is bringing over 250 young Americans from across the country to DC to hear from top conservative climate leaders about what conservative leadership on these issues really looks like. And I got to say, it's a pretty exciting moment, because when we founded the organization 5 years ago, it was still pretty, we got a lot of weird looks when we talked about conservative and climate in the same sentence. Now we have this plan. We have a credible, comprehensive, really bold framework for addressing climate change from a conservative perspective. And so we're going to be bringing those young leaders from across the country to hear about what this is going to look like and how they can be part of this movement for a more effective and realistic climate approach. And so we're really excited to be doing this. And I think there's a lot of great news happening in this space right now.
Yeah, there really is. And a lot of energy too, and political energy. You can feel people talking about. I was up on the hill, I was with Jim Banks. He's like, this is the big thing. This is going to be a game changer in the fall. And when you hear that from the Republican ideas guy, you know that it's catching fire. Rich, I want to turn to you on this one. The Democrats have created a choice, which is the only way we're going to get emissions down is by getting rid of fossil fuels. And in the process, fossil fuels are going to go up to 4, 5, 6, 7. God knows where the dollar per gallon price is going to end. They're bankrupting Americans. This has been a false trust. I've heard you argue this a lot. Tell us how this plan achieves both getting gas prices down and getting emissions down.
Well, John, if you look at almost every element of this plan, every element both decreases emissions and lowers the risks of climate change and improves energy affordability. So if you look at things like innovation, right, that's both driving down the cost and improving the performance of clean energy technologies. And just more broadly, when we think about this challenge, fossil fuels are not the problem. It's the emissions from fossil fuels that are the problem. We have all sorts of technologies, both available today and on the near horizon, that can get those emissions under control, that can take them, safely store them underground, even use them productively for all kinds of different products and services, and even to help us with more energy production, like an enhanced oil recovery, to help us get out of the energy crisis that we're currently in. There's a lot of win-wins here. Completely agree. It's a false choice to say we either have to have affordable energy and a thriving economy or a clean environment. We can have both. And the keys are innovation and smart use of American resources and a really competitive economy so that we can push back against China and Russia.
Amen to that.
I love that. Quill, I wanted to ask you one more question about the American Conservation Coalition Summit. You mentioned that you had a lot of young people that were coming. I'm here at this Young Women's Leadership Summit, so a lot of young folks here as well. When you were bringing these people to Washington, D.C., obviously it's of a younger generation, so you would think that they would be involved on the inventive side, on the tech side, on the innovation side. Are these people that are more in the tech space as far as ingenuity, or are they more people on the policy side and governmental, or is it just kind of a mix?
Well, it's really a mix. Our members at ACC are young professionals who work in business. They're college students. They're activists. There are folks who are studying climate change in college. But I think what's really exciting about this is that so much of the narrative from the left when it comes to this issue of climate change is frankly really depressing. In fact, there was a poll last fall that found that nearly half of young Americans are considering not having kids because of climate change. And so what we're trying to do here with this summit, and what we're trying to do and what we can hope we can do by promoting this new approach, is talk about realistic, effective solutions, but also give young people hope, because that's so important. There's no way that we're ever going to beat this issue of climate change with the amount of anxiety that's circling around right now. And so, we're excited to bring a really diverse group to DC and give them the policy nuts and bolts and the information they need to talk about the practical solutions to this problem of climate change, but also to inspire them to go out into their communities and encourage their peers and say, look, we can tackle this issue. It's serious, but we actually have some real solutions.
Yeah, that's the key. You got to have the real deal, and you guys have delivered that. We got about 45 seconds left. Rich, just real quickly, some of the innovations in nuclear and other places that are going to be game changers that people might not know about. What are a couple of them?
There's incredible stuff in the near horizon. Just last week, I was down in Houston with a group of members touring one of the most interesting facilities in the country. It's called Net Power. Yeah. It's a zero-emission natural gas-fired power plant. It's a natural gas power plant with no smokestack. The CO2 entirely is captured by the process, goes right into a pipeline, and can be safely stored underground. If we can get that to work at scale and provide that around the country, we could continue to use our fossil abundance in the United States potentially forever. We have a virtually inexhaustible supply of this fuel. It's very, very cost effective, and that could be a real game changer for emissions, both here in our economy and that we could export around the world.
Oh, yeah, we'd be the envy of the world. There's no doubt about it. Gentlemen, this is an exciting week. I think history will look back and say this is a game-changing week. So glad to have both of you on to help us understand how important it was. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the former Speaker of the Oklahoma House of Representatives here. He's a current candidate for U.S. Senate, T.W. Shannon. He'll be here in just a few seconds to talk about all the issues of the day right after this.